Welcome back to Dunn's Garage. Hopefully today we will get some new brakes on the front, discs, pads, etc., and get the front shocks changed as well. Also, while it's up in the air, I want to check on the torsion bars to see what diameter they are, try and figure out whether they are the original V8 torsion bars that came with it, or if somebody changed them out and just lowered the front of that car. With the header sticking out the bottom, it's kind of difficult to get in and out of the driveway, so I'd like to lift it up a little bit.
Also need to look at the adjustment of the torsion bars because they are not completely adjustable, but adjustable up and down a fair amount from the factory.
So far, it looks like someone's been in here recently. Got a brand new cap, new bolts in the tie rod where it was likely aligned. The bolts on the upper control arm show signs of having a wrench on them, but no rust. So probably it was recently aligned. The guy we bought it from did mention he had it in, had some things done to it. The inner tie rod end looks new, as does the outer actually, but the boot's torn, so that'll need fixed. The adjuster for the torsion bar, if you come look over here, it's obviously rubbing on something. One of the things we wanted to do today was maybe adjust it so that we had more lift in the front so that we can get in and out of the driveway better. So I guess I will start taking it apart. So the breaker rotor actually looks new. You can see where it's not rusty. However, it's pitted. We have new power stop, vented, drilled, slotted that are going on it. The shocks aren't leaking, and the bushings look okay, but they haven't been replaced anytime recently because the upper bolt's painted green. So we're going to take those out. It does hop, and you can kind of feel the wheels fluttering up and down when you're going down the road. So I think it's definitely time for new shocks.
And we just bought a set of basic Monroes to replace it because this isn't a car that we want to ruin with good handling components that make it so the ride's terrible.
Correct.
Okay, so this is the best way we figured out to loosen these shocks because it has a stud coming through the top with a nut on it. Just clamp onto the shaft of the shock with some vice grips and pin it against the tower. That's the best way we found, at least. Now it's just the bottom bolts.
Okay, so we got the factory shock off. Not factory necessarily. I doubt it. The one that was on it. It's not that bad. I don't even know if you can see it moving. It's a nitrogen charged shock, but this one, which isn't very much stiffer, comes back on its own. So that's at least lost the nitrogen charge for whatever that's worth. The idea behind the nitrogen is it keeps the oil inside from foaming up. Maybe that's the issue.
And the people at Monroe were smart enough to put a hex on the top of their shock so we can tighten it down.
Yes.
Because the other side, the passenger side, was finger tight.
But before I do that, not that it's really that important, I'm going to get the rotor out of the way because I'm taking the rotors off anyway.
And while it was apart, we put 2 turns worth into the torsion bars. Not really an expert on Mopar suspension or torsion bars in general. That grease looks really nasty.
That grease is really nasty.
So we'll put 5 into the other side and see how that affects the ride height and measure it and see if we can get it to a better height in the front.
I didn't think about buying cotter pins.
Well, then we'll just have to save those ones.
Yes.
Suppose they just stuck a brand new cap on old nasty grease?
It looks that way, yes. I didn't realize old cars had those.
What is it?
Instead of a castellated nut, it has this stamped retainer that's castellated to hold it on. Okay, need a bigger wrench. It's big enough, clearly. That was on kind of tight.
Should probably explain for anybody like me who's never dealt with a car this antiquated. The bearings are in the rotors themselves instead of being its own assembly like any kind of moderately modern car.
Yeah, so the rotor is the hub. Be able to tell more when we get that cleaned up, but mostly looks fine.
And there is the bare spindle, which actually doesn't look too bad with the grease. It's still white.
Yeah, although that's between. You can see the seal is kind of ugly. We'll have to take that out to get the bearing out. Then there's a whole gap between the front and the back bearings. It doesn't get much wear, and that grease is the grease that's still white and good looking. So, clean that off, get the seal out, get the bearing out, clean the bearings. Size up the new rotor to make sure it's the same as the old rotor, and put it back together.
We have to size it up because most A-bodies like this came with drum brakes, and buying parts, it is a interesting line between aftermarket and stock as far as what it'll say on application of new parts. But this is a original disc brake car, so you have to make sure it's not a larger brake off of, they'll use B-body brakes and similar things on a lot of the conversion kits. Okay, so it came out through the use of the big pry bar.
Yeah, popped right out. So
Sometimes you just need violence.
we'll use that first next time. And yeah.
That's nasty looking grease.
Okay, so as I can't easily wash my gloves, I will try and avoid getting them all gooey. Okay, so even though I was a little bit disappointed about taking the shocks off, they didn't look that bad, and the brakes didn't really look that bad. Bearings need repacked badly. And to be honest, the brakes don't look that good.
The pads look kind of like they might not have used the proper thing to clean them, and they might have absorbed some liquid and then cracked apart.
Yeah, did you get a good look at that?
No, but I can.
They are newish. They're nice and thick, but this one, for instance, has a great big crack down the middle of it.
Yeah. Wouldn't be good for... Certainly wouldn't be good if we take it to autocross, because I think it'd be funny.
Yeah, funny.
But it certainly wouldn't be good for driving an hour and a half to Mopar Nationals.
Yes. Okay, so
Now the chemical bucket behind you.
almost, because I don't want to get grease all over the nice new rotors.
So, any chance you got the part number on those? I don't think it really matters. They're just... Oh, there we go. They're just the basic power stop drilled and slotted rotors that we got from Summit. I can't even remember how many different cars we've run them on at this point. And they are indeed the same size.
It's the right diameter. And then since the hub of that one is sitting on the floor, the hub on this one, they are, oh, this one's on a blanket. They are the same height. Now, I'm used to these being completely covered in Cosmoline or similar, but this one is not, but it was sealed up in a bag. So, clean the bearings, pack the bearings, put the bearings in the new hub.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter if you ruin the screwdriver because it's my screwdriver, not your screwdriver.
That's true.
I guess the moral of that one is when you can use other people's tools.
Yes. So this was a bit of a shock this morning. Much like Ian said, when, for people who don't know, because nobody packs bearings, cleans bearings. Turns out you can't go to the store and buy kerosene. All I wanted was a little kerosene in a dish. You have to pay almost $50 for a gallon of this stuff. And yes, we went to several places.
They had kerosene substitute.
Yes, they had kerosene substitute. This is weird stuff though, it's all thick. And
Probably doesn't breathe good.
Probably doesn't breathe good. I'm kind of upset that I'm going to put ugly old bearings in this brand new $50 stuff. But that's what we'll do. Probably a good time for safety glasses when you're splashing toxic chemicals in your eyes.
Or gloves.
Yeah, or gloves. It was really cold earlier, so I put the gloves on, but it's not so much cold now. But now let's put the shock in, because there's more room. That's got to soak for a little while anyway.
Shouldn't you put the washer and the bushing on the shock before sticking it in the hole?
Probably.
And perhaps size the bolt?
Probably.
I think this is the first time in my life we've ever put non-performance shocks on anything.
Well, there are no label blue ones from Monroe.
But I mean, I think every other time we've done it, it's either been lift springs or when we did it on the Dodge, they were extra good for carrying weight springs. On the Dakota, they're back pain in a box springs.
Okay, so I don't see any difference other than the part number on these is different. That's a 9/16, just like it was before. So
It's unfortunate. Usually they have like big cable ties on them, so they're easier to stick in the hole.
usually they are seriously charged, though. Okay, so it doesn't fit in this base. Which I wasn't too surprised about. Because you can see it's recessed on one side and sticking out on the other.
How's it compared to the original or the one we took off?
The original is dramatically recessed on one side and falling out the other side. Do you have a hammer?
I have a little baby hammer in the toolbox. Let's pause.
Maybe that's enough.
It is worth noting that this is genuinely the right application, because usually Summit Racing is good about that compared to just O'Reilly's or your regular parts store.
And yes, I know I put it in there without putting the washer on top first.
Maybe that means you're
I
gonna.
wanted to see if I can get it to fit. And it fits.
Okay.
Naturally, because I wouldn't have to take it out again if I had put the washer on the bushing on it. I wonder how shoe car people do this without messing up all their shiny new stuff.
They take their cars to car washes and blast all the gunk off before they do this?
Well, I meant banging it on everything.
No. They just don't show that part of the part.
Okay. It's almost in there.
Now it's just the top end and tighten it down?
Well, when I say it's almost in there, I mean it's almost in there, but not quite. Okay. Here's an opportunity to ruin a small screwdriver. Ideally, a punch would be good too.
Oh, you need a punch?
You need a pointier punch or a smaller punch?
That's the pointiest punch I have. You don't get many options when you buy your tools at crappy auctions or Harbor Freight.
Okay. Put this over here for a minute. I know I'm supposed to be holding that up with a bungee cord or a zip tie or some such thing, but it goes through the control arm and makes it practically impossible to do that.
Okay, so this is the top side of the shock absorber.
Yeah, and so earlier I said they look the same. They look the same as each other, but you can see that there's a wide side and a small side. And if you look down there, there's a big hole in the car where that goes. So put the wide side down, washer on, put the nut on. Trying to remember where we put the wrench.
And then tighten everything down.
Yeah, so the best part about this is it doesn't work for crap. So I won't get the diluted grease all in my brand new container of stuff because it doesn't actually cut the grease very well at all.
I got a couple gallons of gas in a bucket.
Well, yeah, that's what, like I was saying, you know, they're trying to keep you from doing something dumb like go put gasoline in a bucket like people did 50 years ago. But what they've done is replace it with something that doesn't work, so the best choice is probably to go get some gasoline and put it in a bucket. I was also kind of disappointed that the bearings cost $25 a pair, and that cost $50. Could have just thrown the bearings away. Now, of course, I have to do both sides.
The worst part is the $25 ones were the Timken American-made bearings that probably would have been fine.
Doesn't look damaged, at least. Doesn't look clean, but doesn't look damaged. Okay, so packing a bearing, you need to fill it all up with grease. I haven't done this in a really long time because bearings are sealed now. So you mush it in the backside and it comes out the front. Usually when you see people doing this, they're doing it with a whole lot more goo. Getting it everywhere. Which is probably the way I should do it. And when you do, grease that you couldn't get out is displaced out the front. So rather than continuing to mush that around, scrape it off. They make a tool for this too, but I don't have that either. But this is the way I've always seen it done anyway.
Well, and I don't know how big of a value it would be given how often we pack bearings. Like once a decade.
Yes. That is by no means done. But the Wonder Cleaner doesn't clean it very well, so I'm getting a lot of old grease out. At least the bearing on the front side of the rotor is a lot less large. Okay.
Is there such a thing as cramming too much grease into all of that?
In this application, no, because there's a large cavity in the middle of this thing. In other applications, there are machines that if you put too much grease in them, it has no way to escape because they're sealed up to keep other kind of contaminants out. But this is done. Probably should have checked to make sure the bearing seals were correct before committing to all of this. This one is slightly different than the one that came out. The one that came out has this big rubber flange around the back, and this one does not. Huh. Definitely should have checked to see if we had the right seal before. Because we do not. Because this needs driven in. So O'Reilly came through with the new seal, and you can see this one actually looks like the seal that came out of it. So while I was there, because I don't have anything here big enough to knock this in, I got a piece of exhaust adapter that is the right size. And I have this tiny little cobbler's hammer. Wouldn't be my first choice, but that's a hammer we have.
There is a press behind us.
Yeah, it's not really a press kind of thing, though. Only got a little bit of wood in there. Don't do it this way.
I was gonna say, shouldn't you grease the spindle first?
Yeah, won't hurt. So this is where the seal rides. I don't want a whole lot on there, but
Also, probably don't want it bare.
don't want it bare, especially the first time I put it on.
This definitely seems like a way to end up with your rotors all covered in grease, which is really not what you want.
They will definitely need cleaned before I get the pads anywhere near them, yes. Not a good noise.
No. Oh, it's hitting the caliper.
Caliper. Ah, that's much better. Screw wrench over here on the other side.
On the other side.
I suppose technically an adjustable wrench, which normally I would not use, but everybody does. Okay, no noise. So you go tight, loosen a little bit, spins nice.
Then what you just put on there is the castle clamp thing. That's not a castle nut.
Yeah, often there's these slots cut in the nut itself so that the cotter pin can hold it still. This has got multi-points in it to grab a hold of the nut to keep it from spinning. Probably should use a new cotter pin.
Yeah, but where would the fun in that be?
Pliers are on the other side of the car, aren't they?
Yeah.
Bend the cotter pin over. So we got the dust caps on. Turns out we weren't idiots. I measured the diameter of the hub, both sides, and it was about 3,000 smaller, both sides. After filing all the dust caps, we got it to go. In all that mess, we got grease all over the rotors, and we got the other side put back together. Got the pads on, calipers on. But I noticed that the witness marks in the retaining hardware is opposite of the way it was over there. So I'm going to put this one together the way the one is on the other side, because that seems more logical. Not necessarily logical that I do it the same way as the other side, but that way seems more logical.
And with some of the things done on the car, it's fairly safe to expect that the last guy didn't exactly do everything correctly.
Yeah, so tell me if I'm wrong, but this has a little ridge on it. The ridge fits very nicely in here, which pushes down on the little nubs that are on the caliper and holds it in there, but not really tight, so that it's able to slide back and forth, which is what it's supposed to do. And the wrench is on the other side of the car. The shocks are nice and blue.
At least they're not yellow.
So on the other side, we turned it 2 full turns tighter.
So tighten it.
Yes. Difficult to impossible to see from here, but what he's doing is turning the adjuster on the torsion bar in hopes of raising up the front of the car a little bit. We still have yet to actually measure the torsion bar to see what diameter it is to decide whether it's got 6-cylinder springs or 8-cylinder springs in them.
Okay.
Well, so we were level with the top of the fender. I'm sorry. Fender was level with the top of the tire before. We turned it 2 turns on both sides. This side's higher than that side, but the wheels are turned and no, it isn't.
But I think it's safe to say it was cranked down about as far as it would go before.
Well, I mean, it was down low. It looks okay now. Now, granted, it's uphill a little bit and the wheels are turned and it might look different out there, but
Well, and we'll have to find a bumpy road to drive down and settle it.
yeah,
We're gonna have to put leaf springs in the back. Or
Probably.
shackles.
yeah.
Well, I guess now it's just start it and see if tightening all the bolts in the exhaust helped any. Seems like more of the noise is back there. So to start with, when we backed out of the driveway, we're usually scrapes, no longer scrapes. So at a minimum, we improved the height of the suspension.
It drives like an entirely different car. It's not floating. It's not bobbing. It's not even shaking. I don't know how we took the shake out of it. I suppose the old rotors could have been very warped, but they didn't feel like it.
If it was slammed all the way down and every time the suspension went up at all, the adjuster that we saw rubbing the frame rail, if it was hitting the bottom of the car, that would make it shake, wouldn't it?
Yeah, I suppose. But you notice the hood's not shaking? Hardly.
Yeah, normally it would clatter.
Flaps all over like it's not bolted down to the hinges or in the latch completely.
Some idiot running down the road.
Well, golfer. That's the polite term. Golfer.
I don't hear any bearings dying, so I think we might have packed them correctly.
Yeah.
How's it stop? Good. Perhaps the carburetor needs some tuning.
Yeah, I'm really disappointed that it worked so well for so long. And then, with no change, it started working badly.
We probably need a box of Holley tuning parts and perhaps some time at Dragway 42.
Just like you kicked a hazard.
What?
Heading off down the road, closed road.
We made it back after the test drive. It's miraculously better. So just to recap what we did, we put new shocks on, cheap ones. We adjusted the torsion bars 2 turns on either side in the tight direction to raise it up higher. We put new slotted drilled rotors on it and pads, repacked the bearings, and that was about it.
Tightened all the bolts on the collectors.
Yes, we tightened all the bolts on the collectors, and so now it sounds a lot better, and it doesn't stink near as bad inside.
And ideally with it being higher in the front, which if you're going for the drag car aesthetic, it's kind of supposed to be a bit tall in the front.
I don't know that it's tall though. It looks pretty level to me,
Yeah.
which is fine. It could come up in the back, I suppose, but it doesn't need to. Those tires fit fine.
That was the first real time we drove it a lot after the tires too.
Yeah, but it didn't rub coming in or out of the driveway, so that's good.
And with that should mean that part of the exhaust should just be fine now.
Yes, because I won't keep dragging it on the ground and messing it up.
Neighbor's dog.
Yeah. So next on the list, the speaker grills came from Amazon. I've been trying to figure out what to do to fix this. Ideally, I need a new door panel, but you can't just buy a new door panel. And every time you run the window crank, you cut your finger and you drag your feet on that in and out. And then it occurred to me, I could just get cheap, old school, flat speaker grills from Amazon. And I hear that they arrived today. So that'll be one of the first things that goes on next. And then I can take the duct tape off the hole on the other side.
And then as far as driving it, when you put the tack in it and tune the carburetor.
Yeah.
But actually properly tuning the carburetor will have to wait till mid-April, because that's when the drag strip opens up.
Yeah, it'll also be not changing back and forth between 70 and 20 degrees.
What do you mean? It's definitely not snowing right now.
It's definitely not snowing right now. It kind of was earlier today, so. Neighbor's second dog came out, looked at us, turned around and went back inside. So that's good. So I guess that's about it for this time. See you again next time.